So let's start by having each of our panelists introduce themselves briefly and put themselves in their context. What is the work that they do? What do they think about every day? Thank you.
Go.
Hello, everybody. Is this working? I'm Glenn Gibbons. I work for Covidien, so welcome to Covidien. This is, you're in the building that we make sutures.
Sorry.
Working? Is that better? All right, great. Well, as I was saying, my name is Glenn Gibbons. I'm a member of the business development team here at Covidien. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. This is a building here where we make our sutures in the back, and then behind this building we make our needles for sutures. Roughly 40 plus million of them come out of the shop back there. So I'm responsible for mergers, acquisitions, strategy, and portfolio management for our general surgical products business. It's roughly $1.5 billion or so, and every day we're looking at acquisition opportunities, distribution, licensing, new technologies to expand our portfolio. General surgical products is comprised of really three business areas. We have wound closure or suture, access devices and instruments, and electrosurgery. So that's I've been with Covidien about 5 years now, all in M&A type roles. Prior to joining Covidien, I spent a long time with General Electric. Thank you for coming.
Hi, my name is Margaret Cartiera. I am with Connecticut Innovations. My background and training is in biomedical engineering and drug delivery. I hold several years of industry experience in regulatory affairs, competitive intelligence, and investments. I worked for several years with Siemens Medical Imaging Systems and for a handful of startup companies in medical devices and the biotech sectors. I've been with Connecticut Innovations since 2011, and I've been working on the investment team. In November, I transitioned over to the Connecticut Bioscience Innovation Fund, where I help support fund operations and other bioscience initiatives. So Connecticut Innovations in general is the largest funding entity of innovative entrepreneurs and companies in the state. We have programs, we have several different arms within our structure. We have the SBI group, which has several different programs such as the SBI Match program and the Talent Bridge. We also have our lending group, which supports companies that are further along in their development, and we have our investment team that provides equity investments, which is probably the most relevant to today's talk. The Bioscience Fund is specifically focused on the bioscience sector, and it's a new fund that opens its doors on January 2nd. It's a $200 million fund that's been established over the next 10 years.
I'm Basam, Nabulsi, and I'm an IP attorney. And I think of the three panelists, these two are much more important because they have access to money. And I think that in our little prep call earlier today, I would just sit and listen to Glenn talk if it were up to me. But I'm with McCarter, a law firm that has a footprint in the Northeast. I work in the Stanford office. I have an engineering background, but I've been practicing patent law for almost 30 years now. And have worked with some of the companies that are here, but not me.
Well, so thank you very much. I think as the moderator host, I really should take a minute before I don't do it to really thank Covidien for the use of the space, and that's really important. So just setting the scene, I thought we could each speak to what the real trends are in medical device companies today. Now, there are different flavors of companies, different focuses, but if we could begin to touch on the approaches, the strategies that you see in the big picture, that would be very helpful. And obviously, this is as it affects what you guys each do in your context. So maybe Glenn could sort of warm us up.
Great. Well, what we're seeing in the industry right now is definitely focus on cost and keeping costs down. And as we look at opportunities, we're hearing from our customers, the healthcare providers, that they need to do procedures more cost effectively or faster. So as we look at opportunities, we're always focused on how can we bring a new technology in that's going to either reduce the cost of a procedure or improve safety or both, ideally both. But it's definitely a shift toward cost containment and something that we're focused on quite a bit.
Well, go ahead, Don.
Sure. I think that from my perspective as an IP attorney, there are the big, well-capitalized companies that you might work with, and then there are the startups, the entrepreneurs, the universities. So focusing on the latter group, I think that funding is what the big trend is, figuring out where the money's going to come from. I think that if you go back 10, 15 years ago, it felt like a strong patent portfolio was a ticket to funding. It feels less so now. I have clients that have tremendous patent portfolios that are struggling to be funded. And I think, and Glenn can maybe add some perspective on that, but I think that that's one of the biggest challenges, is making cost-effective decisions about IP portfolios that align with the company's need to raise money and get to the next stage of development.
Interesting.
In terms of investment, I think there are more investors that are looking at medical devices just because the path to success, to market, is a little bit shorter with medical devices as compared to pharmaceuticals. So I do think there's an appetite there. But I think a lot of it has to come down to the novelty of the device, its IP strength, as well as the management team that can execute.
Well, I was going to throw into the mix, and this is, I guess, something that's just interesting to me. How do you think about how the regulatory environment at the level of the FDA is impacting the trends and the strategies? We have the healthcare payer system, but we also have the regulatory environment. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I do think that several of the entrepreneurs or innovators are looking to find devices that are maybe class 1 or class 2 just because the regulatory hurdles are less for those devices. So a class 1, you just need to register your device, your company rather, and class 2, you need to get 510(k) clearance, which is a filing, as opposed to a class 3 device where there's a PMA application and it's much more involved in terms of clinical data.
I would just add to that, we're seeing in some changes in the 510(k) environment. It used to be kind of almost a no-brainer or slam dunk, and a lot of times now, depending on the device, we're seeing the regulators looking for clinical data support to support the filing. So that extends the time to get approval as well as the cost to get approval, and puts it much more at risk than it was before. On the PMA side, it's just the regulatory environment has gotten more challenging, and just the timelines have gotten extended.
I think it's absolutely true that, as a service provider, an IP attorney is a service provider, companies bring you in and look for your advice and expertise. And certainly in the medical device side, the regulatory advisors at the table much earlier today, it seems to me, than was true a little while ago. Mm-hmm. So I think the sensitivity to the issue is certainly there in the medical device development community.
And I know, Bess, that you do work often one-on-one mentoring startup companies. Do you ever help them think about how to position their ideas because of what you understand or have seen in the regulatory path ahead?
I don't know if there's much that I can do as an IP attorney to position them, to write a patent application that postures something in a certain way. But certainly I think all of us who work in the medical device area that find themselves working with younger or less experienced people have an opportunity to ask the questions and make sure that the focus is there at the right point in time. And if the answer doesn't seem fully thought through, to challenge it to the point that they'll look into it.
Right, and just to add, as investors, we are looking for that strategy, that regulatory strategy to be in place, that you've thought about what that path will be and what hurdles and challenges you'll encounter. So even if you know that it will be a 510K path or a class 3 PMA. We know what you will encounter, but we want to make sure that you know what you'll encounter and that you're having the appropriate discussions very early on and that you're prepared for those.
Just to add what Margaret said, as we structure deals, a lot of times we're focused on hitting certain regulatory milestones. So, payment upfront, but then payment upon receipt of 510K, payment upon commercialization. So we definitely take regulatory into account when we structure deals.
One spot that does play into the IP portfolio and strategy is that for companies that start in the U.S., you file in the U.S. and then you look overseas. It's an expensive thought to extend your rights overseas. But to the extent the regulatory environment is going to push your first sales outside the U.S., then you need to encourage the client to align their IP portfolio with that market reality.
And just to add to that, we also see as we think about selling overseas, many times certain countries like to make sure that you have regulatory approval in the country of manufacture. For example, if you want to sell in China, you have to, you get approval in China, you have to manufacture the product here in the U.S., get U.S. approval to be able to sell in China. So you can't get approval in the U.S., manufacture in Europe, and then expect to sell in China.
So one of the comments that I saw that you discussed this morning was the area of healthcare applications development. Is that something that, Margaret, you're seeing a lot of companies coming in? Is that something you're funding? And then I would ask Glenn to add, is that something that Covidien looks at? Is that part of a toolkit? And then I think perhaps there's a perspective on how are you protecting these things and how do you ensure they're valuable? So go for it.
There are a lot of apps out there, and I think there are a lot of healthcare apps coming in as prospects. For investors, what we struggle with is how do you differentiate yourself and what is the value and how will you get the viewership and what will the revenue model be? And then how do you really protect that asset? Because software is so hard to protect. So that's very different as compared to a medical device that you can touch and insert into the body. It's a very different type of device.
From our perspective, not the business I'm part of, but broader Covidien definitely takes a look at these type of areas as we think about getting beyond surgery. So getting on the front end of the curve of the care continuum, if we can come up with solutions or ways to kind of detect problems that help avoid surgery to help reduce the cost of care, that's something we're interested in. We take a look at with select groups in the organization.
And how do you evaluate the intellectual property on these? Do you care as much?
We have a lot of lawyers, so but we definitely, at Basam, I think we worked for Susan Froshauer one time. IP is something that's very, very critical in anything and everything we do, and we definitely spend a lot of time up front, whether it's a deal of this nature or any deal, looking at the IP, because a lot of times that's really the strength of what you're paying for, or some strength around it.
Yeah, I think our conversation this morning also talked about apps, but talked about data more generally and the value of data in the medical space. And I have a number of clients and consulted with a number of people on the ability to protect systems to manage and manipulate data. Algorithms to work with data are being developed by really smart people every day. And the IP landscape for that is evolving. The Supreme Court is going to look at it again this term. So I think that from my perspective, for companies whose lifeblood is associated with data management, data manipulation, data refinement, positioning patent applications as best you can to react to how the law evolves is the best you can do. I think that One of the advantages you have in this particular space in the patent world is that examination is incredibly slow in that space. So you can be patent pending from the time your child's born until they graduate from grad school with very little effort. So, you know, you can kind of hedge your bets a little bit, develop your technology, try and develop some differentiation in the market, and have a patent position that is still nascent and hopefully will develop and align with how the market values your technology.
So I think, just stepping back a bit, I noted that there was an interest on the part of this group to describe how the trends in patent law are impacting decision making. It looks like that these post-grant reviews and then the transition to the first to file, and that seemed to be part of your discussion this morning. Is that a piece of it?
We did talk about it, and I'm not sure anybody's interested in it but me, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Well, but how is it impacting in the medical device?
It's impacting the medical device world, I think, as it's impacting everybody. I mean, this is the one-year anniversary of the transition of the U.S. patent law to a first to file from a first to invent, first inventor to file from a first to invent. So that's a transition that's ongoing. It certainly behooves entrepreneurs and startups and big companies like Covidien to file early and file full disclosure so that you have effective filing dates. The post-grant review thing, though, is a big deal. That is a big deal. That's a big deal for the following reason. You know, patent litigation is hugely expensive, and Congress and the community of the patent world has tried to figure out a way to cut into that to make the system work better. This is my philosophical view. So what's come out of that is a system that allows patents to be pulled back into the patent office for a second look. That it really it's been demonstrated the patent office doesn't view the blue ribbon as being all that important. They're more than happy to invalidate patents that they issued just a few years ago. So it's a tool that's being actively used and will continue to be actively used. There are roughly 1,000 filings that are currently within the last 2 years have been put in play. For a large entity like Covidien, it costs $23,000 as a filing fee to start the process. So you can imagine how important this technology has to be in the marketplace to justify that kind of activity. For small players, I was worried when the law came into effect that big companies would squeeze the little guys by just filing IPRs, you know, post-grant reviews, and just melt them dry. I haven't seen any evidence of that. The IPRs that are being filed are for commercial purposes, from what I've seen.
For us as investors and for our portfolio companies, when we are at board meetings talking about strategy, the change is very important because it affects how the company spends its cash on hand and how quickly they burn through the money they have. IP is very important, and building a solid portfolio is key, but also making the right decisions as to which filings to move forward with is an important piece as well. Whatever they file will have to continue with the filings, and as you mentioned, there's tremendous costs associated with that. So that's a continual discussion that we have.
Interesting. So the next segment I thought we could get into a little bit is how do you, I mean, there are a couple of different kinds of investment approaches. There's investment in a startup company, there's investment in a patent, there's a large M&A transaction, and so everyone thinks about this a bit differently. But one of the transition questions that someone suggested is, and this is initially I would say for Glenn, what do you care about more if you're thinking about a technology from a university? Do you really care about having it done in collaboration with the scientists so that you have a real working sense of that technology? Or do you really just want the patent? What's more important to you, and how do you think about licensing and technology and the value of the patent per se?
Sure. I think we look at the patent as being very important, but I think just as important, depending on where the patent is and what the technology is it something that we can easily bring in-house and benefit for, create a device and put it on the market? Or is it such that we need really the person that invented the product to kind of collaborate with us to bring us to the next level? So it really it depends on the product. Sometimes we just want the product, the patent, because it bolsters some work that we're doing. Other times it's gets us into a new space, and we need the people that developed it to help us continue to get in that space. So we look at both sides.
And you have a pot of resource to make those kind of collaborations.
We do. We have funding.
Or even little biotech.
Yeah, we have funding that we set aside for that type of activity. A lot of our, not particularly in the division I'm in, but we do have a ventures group that looks at new technologies and invests in companies that we think we'd like to own someday. So we do that, but we also do one-off patent deals if somebody has something that's either very interesting in a new area or an area that helps protect where we are.
So I guess what I've been really interested in getting to is, again, hearing a little bit more from CI about, or from Margaret, about how she thinks, how she really views the whole continuum of assets in considering a medical device investment. We heard that time to revenue is closer, so that's an appealing general aspect. But sort of what are the specifics that you're really weighing? How do you see not just your landscape, but sort of what's going on in other investor groups around the country, including the larger blue chip VCs?
So I think it depends on who you're talking to and who the investor is. So Connecticut Innovations is unique in that we invest at a very early stage, and even within our organization, we have different programs, different funds. So we have a pre-seed fund, which invests sort of in a company that really is still needing to execute and develop a proof of concept or a prototype. So it's a $150,000 loan that looks for a match. And the way we evaluate those prospects is different than a standard deal that comes into the door that's looking for a $2 million investment. So even within our own house, we look at deals differently depending on what they're looking for and the stage that they're at. I also think just within the general investment community, who you're approaching, whether it's an angel or a family office, or if you're going for non-dilutive government funding, is very different. But if you look at the continuum, and if an entrepreneur is looking to develop their idea, given the fact that it's probably going to take you a while before you can attract a strategic, you would want to cobble together non-dilutive funding from governmental sources first, or from programs like a pre-seed fund or angel investors, and really look to have your team, your technology, and ways to de-risk that bit. And what we're looking for is solid science, a data set that really makes us believe that this is going to work, a team behind it, and a defined set of milestones that from point A to point B, with whatever investment you get, you will really be able to execute. But at every stage of the investment pathway, I think team, technology, plan, what your financial future looks like and where you will get that funding, all of that comes into account. And at those different stages, you are evaluated slightly differently depending on who the investor is and what program you're applying for.
So one of the things that you can't help but note is the large number of M&A deals that are going on in the medical device space. Not just at Covidien, but there's an interesting sort of series of deals that you're doing, including a very cool one that you just closed. Can you talk to us a little bit about that portfolio, the strategy, what's driving it?
Sure.
I want to hear about the deal.
Yeah, that was done by one of our sister businesses, but we recently closed Gibbons Imaging. You folks are familiar with the pill cam. And that was very attractive for us. It gets us in a new space in a big way. So we have a division that's focused on new technologies and the GI space. And we're looking to make a splash in that space. We have some smaller companies, Barracks, it was one of the acquisitions, and then another smaller one. But we're attracted by, first of all, the technology is really cool. We think
Do you want to talk about it? This is an $865 million deal, just so that everyone,
Well, it's a pill cam, right? So, unfortunately, I don't have the level of knowledge around this because it was a different division. But the pill cam is something we've been obviously keeping our eye on for a long time, and we're always looking for opportunities to grow. And this was one of those opportunities I was saying that got us into the GI space in a meaningful way. And as Covidien, we like to place bets that are going to put us in the top tiers of the market. And we view that as an opportunity to do that, and we see it as a long runway, and basically changing the way care is delivered, so that getting more on the front end of care, so identifying issues that we can address earlier on instead of waiting until surgery is required. So that's why I was attracted. That was very attractive to us. Obviously, the big check we had to write, and we're hoping to do a lot of good things in our business.
I had nothing to do with the deal and really wasn't familiar with it until it came up this morning in our pre-call. So just guess how many U.S. patent filings Gibbons Imaging, is that what it's called? Gibbons Imaging has that are published, which means 18 months or older. How many people think they had less than 100? How many people think they had between 100 and 200 U.S. patent filings? How many people think between 200 and 300? How many people think north of 300 U.S. patent filings? 338 U.S. patent filings. Where was that client when I was out looking to build a practice? 338. So I'm not sure Covidien took a real flyer on the technology position.
And this is an Israeli company, so there are additional patents you missed.
Right.
It's interesting. Are you also thinking, Covidien, of going into other areas to making those sort of in-depth hits? That
Sure. We're very opportunistic buyers. As you can see, we've done a lot of transactions. But depending on the division you're in, if you're in the folks in the early technologies business, it's all about the newest, the latest, greatest technologies. In my business, the products are a little bit more mature, so we're looking to expand our portfolio, add new products to the mix that are going to play in the general surgery space, allow us to generate revenues quickly, and just broaden our portfolio beyond where we are today with surgeries and some of the access instruments devices. We have other divisions, our stapling and energy division. They always looking at new technologies. How can they deliver newer technologies that are cheaper and more, provide additional, I would say, safety and ease of and making the procedure easier. So every division within the organization kind of has a role to play in the portfolio, and we each have our strategies well laid out. That's, I think, core to our success is just knowing the strike zone and knowing our play. And it allows us to be very agile and move quickly as we look to do deals.
So, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Glenn a question, I guess, because I've had clients that have talked, I don't know if they've talked to you, but they've talked to Covidien, for example, and have gone through due diligence and have shared with their patent attorney that I could put the champagne on ice. It's just a matter of days. And then, lo and behold, no deal gets done. So I'm just, I'm curious what insights, if any, you can offer to, and I've actually had the same experience on behalf of clients with Connecticut Innovations. And one of the things is that the due diligence for a Covidien deal and for a Connecticut Innovations deal, the same issues get covered. It might be a deeper dive for Covidien if there's more money on the table, but it's just as time consuming for the company that's trying to develop a strategic relationship. What are your thoughts on why deals don't close when there seems to be a lot of love in the mating dance?
I would say most of the time, not all the time, but we are pretty mindful up front before we put something on the table that we're pretty confident we're going to have a successful outcome. But there are plenty of situations that we don't have a successful outcome. And a lot of times it has to do with, when we do a deeper dive into the portfolio we're looking to buy, we either find something that we have covered in a different way, we don't see value, or we notice that it's potentially infringing on somebody else's. So a lot of times it comes down to the strength of the IP and where the IP sits in comparison to either our portfolio or other portfolios out there. And we're pretty fortunate in the fact that we have a very good team of IP attorneys and can have the resources available to help do the analysis on the IP. So it's, as we look at deals, first and foremost, it's about strategy, how quickly we can commercialize, but underpinning all of that is the strength of the IP, and is it something that can be easily knocked off by somebody else or not? Because as we look at writing big checks, we want to make sure that we're protected as we go forward. We definitely don't want to get in a situation where we're going to be putting out an E2 product, or somebody's going to be able to come up with a product that's going to be either be much cheaper out there and potentially take away our business.
How do you find deals?
How do we find deals? Well, deals come from every different direction. I mean, one of the benefits we have of being a large medical device player that does a lot of deals, there's no shortage of deal inflow. So we have investment banks that contact us with opportunities. We have companies that are out there auctioning themselves off that either come directly to us or through investment banks. We have on the Covidien website, if folks haven't seen, we have an area for entrepreneurs to enter ideas. And so a lot of times, I know one of the first deals I did at Covidien was because somebody from Israel had submitted an idea to us that was really cool, and we ended up acting upon that. It's pretty unusual, but for all you folks who have great ideas, I would encourage you to look at that. It's called Submit New Ideas on the Covidien homepage. And it allows to submit your idea, and we have a whole team behind that evaluates, looks at the idea, and kind of let you know, is it something we're going to move forward or not, so it doesn't go into a black hole. And then we spend a lot of time going to trade shows, and ideally you want to be in a situation where you're not in an auction with other folks, and we spend a lot of time in trade shows talking to folks, building relationships, so it's there's no one way deals get done. We like to tout that we can move quickly and make the deal situation painless. And so that gets us a lot of looks. It gets us a lot of looks, and it gets us, it benefits us in the deal world.
If I could just comment on the earlier question in terms of why a deal sometimes doesn't get done. We at Connecticut Innovations do have a lengthy diligence process, as most venture funds do. And when we go through the different stages, we are digging pretty deep on the technology, but also on the management team, what the plan is, what the market potential is, and what the possibility is that this particular company can capture a slice of that market. And as we go through the different pieces and parts, we're also looking for a syndicate, an investor syndicate to come together, especially for those Series A rounds that are coming together. No investor wants to be the only investor at the table. We know that it's going to take a while and more than one round to get that company to success, and success meaning getting to the market, getting revenues. And so as we're going through our diligence, we are looking at the team and whether the team can execute. We are looking at the plan, whether or not the plan is reasonable. So along the way, flags start popping up, or if we're taking a look at the IP, and there's a lot of competitors in the space, and we start sensing that the likelihood that they're really not going to be able to capture their slice of the market is sort of the sum of those data points coming together. And there really are a lot of people knocking on our door because there aren't a lot of venture firms that are investing this early on.
Do you have access to the licensing or the M&A people or the deal doers in the medical device bigger company network?
We definitely have a vast network among our team. Everybody is very well networked, and then all of us have had our own industry experiences, and we have peer reviewers that we tap from time and again. So we tap our network to sort of find out what's going on in the industry.
That's
Relatively
also
often.
a value you add to the companies.
Right, and so then, internally, some of the directors say the work really doesn't begin until we do the deal, and then we sit on the board. And that, I think, is one of the greatest values that Connecticut Innovations brings, because we are an evergreen fund, and so we take whatever returns that we get from our exits and reinvest them into new companies. But also we are patient dollars. We really are looking to help the company shepherd and provide as many resources and as much advice and network and help the company grow and do as much as they can.
Absolutely. So this question is perhaps just interesting to me, but it's for Glenn. How do you manage your collaborations? Do you have research teams from within Covidien that meet with the company, the partner company, the biotech on an ongoing basis? Does it become a real collaboration, a joint development project in the way that I was exposed to doing deals when I did them for Pfizer? Or do you prefer just an acquisition strategy? Or again, it's probably a mixed soup, but it's always interesting to hear about a big company's culture and how they approach these kinds of transactions.
We do a little bit of both. I mean, I would say that, at least from my perspective, the preference is to own, because we have more control, and we can control the speed, the activities, and sometimes you get into situations, we've done this before, you get into situations where you're working with a partner, all of a sudden the partner's out of funding, and then they're looking to you to fund. Unfortunately, there's a lot of issues that come up in collaborative efforts, but we've had ones that have been successful too. So from my perspective, I prefer to go out, either buy or license or distribute some of these technology.
Interesting, yeah. The other part is the other way is harder sometimes. Another question along those lines. Let's see. Now, I'm sure you do deals globally. Do you ever make equity investments in companies? Do you ever do you have teams in, for example, Singapore that are making investments in Asia? How does this all go?
We have, within Covidien, we have a venture fund, and we have a whole team of folks that are looking to invest in, I would say, later stage companies, so not as early as maybe the folks that Margaret look at, but more on the kind of the C and D round, in areas that we find very attractive. We think there's growth opportunity, either to potentially acquire the company at some point, or learn more about the space, or just be a part of it. So we do have an active group going out and looking at venture investments. Most of them are U.S. based, but so that's something we look at very closely, and it's usually a good way to either learn about a space or learn about a new company that could be something hot in years to come.
How big's the fund? No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Not big enough.
So, Bess, this is just a playful question.
Okay.
What is your favorite, obviously you can't disclose confidential information, but when you think of the neatest medical device that you helped shape through the patent strategy and the portfolio? What is it?
Wow. You know, I was in-house at US Surgical, which is now Covidien, for almost 10 years, and we were at the forefront of the minimally invasive surgery back in the day. So the original endo-GIA patents were done by, I was involved in that, the original EndoClip, the original locking trocar. So I think those are my medical device offerings, but the coolest thing I ever worked on was, who remembers, there's a lot of young people here today, but who remembers acid wash blue jeans? I helped Mr. Ricci get a patent on the process for making acid wash blue jeans, and the fashion industry didn't know a patent from a pair of bib overalls. So he sued the industry and was ultimately successful in enforcing his acid wash blue jeans patent against the entire industry. That was cool.
Okay. So we do have some time, and I think to further stimulate the conversation, how about, are there questions from the audience, please? Hi.
This one is for Glenn. On when you started to talk about having to, if you wanted to market in China, you first had to have the patent in the country of manufacture. Can I take from that would probably be true for distribution in other countries as well, or is that just specific to China?
I would say, look, every country has its own rules and regulations. I brought up China because it's a big market, but...
Well, the reason I'm asking is the follow-up question.
Sure.
Which is, when you evaluate on a new acquisition, where you're going to go first for your patents, or where you're going to manufacture, do you take that into account?
Definitely. As we look at building up the pro forma, we call it, or the financial plan, we definitely look closely at where the revenue is going to come from. So everybody wants to get into the big markets that are developing, right? So BRIC countries, Brazil, China, India, and so we definitely look closely at, because we see the growth, a lot of the growth coming from those areas. So it's something we talk about and think about all the time.
One of the biggest challenges, I think, in the early spend for medical device companies is how to form file. And, trying to anticipate which of your early stage filings are going to turn out to have the value, to the extent there's multiple, they're not just iterative, there's things that are in parallel, which ones justify a real worldwide strategy, which don't, because, it's for a worldwide filing on one patent application after a PCT, so you're 30 months out, you're talking $80,000 to $100,000. That's just straight disbursements to all the offices and all the associates. So it's a substantial spend. And you've got multiple legs in your development team where you're looking at multiple applications that are going to mature over time, trying to decide, where to spend the money is daunting at best.
And just to add to that as well, in addition to IP, it's the regulatory environment. Every country has its own regulatory requirements, and some of the countries are more challenging than others. So as we look to build our forecast, we take into account how long something, well, we might sell it here, which is great, we still have to get it approved in the other countries to sell. So that definitely factors into how we build our financial plans, and how we look at technologies and companies in their portfolios, and our ability to take them beyond the U.S. and Europe.
Do you see different trends, in the medical needs in the device space in different countries? Are there very distinguishing differences that you contemplate in your strategy?
Sure, we do. As you look in the developing countries, there are different tier levels of care. And so, for example, in China or India, they have the top tier, and then they have the middle tier, and then they have the bottom tier. So we look at what kind of offerings we could bring to the tiers. I mean, obviously, the higher the tier, the smaller the opportunity. So we're looking at ways to penetrate all the tiers with different offerings. some of our most high-tech products are probably going to be geared toward the higher tier, but are there more value-driven products that are going to be good enough and get the job done? Are they something that we can bring into some of the lower tiers? So it's definitely country by country, but penetrating the different levels.
Yeah, this question's for all three panelists. It's about provisional patents. In particular, I'm wondering what role do you see for provisional patents for well-funded ventures or for big companies such as Covidien?
So just to make sure we're all working from the same point of understanding, a provisional application lives for up to 12 months and it doesn't get examined. And it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles of a full-fledged patent application. So it's a way to put a stake in the ground, your patent pending, you have a filing date, you have 12 months within which to perfect that by way of a non-provisional and/or a foreign filing. So the question is, how does a provisional strategy, which is a baby step, fit into a well-funded operation like Covidien, for example? I think that there are many instances where a provisional still makes sense for bigger companies. For example, if you go back and look at how Japanese company, before the U.S. had a provisional, I can talk IP forever. I'll try and keep this short. But if you look back, the Japanese had a provisional filing system long before the U.S. did. And if you look at any old Japanese patents that were filed, there would be 3 or 4 provisionals identified before they ultimately filed their non-provisional. The same can apply for a company like Covidien, where their engineers are working away. They've got the American College of Surgeons trade show, so they have to get something on file, but they know that over the course of the next year, there's going to be 6 or 7 different stages the product is going to go through. So in that instance, a provisional is a very good strategy because you can capture all those iterations into a single filing at the 12-month anniversary and take that application worldwide. If you file a non-provisional on day one, then you're really hamstrung. You have to file CIPs, you spend a lot more money, and it's not necessarily the best strategy. That's what you were thinking?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Provisionals are widely used for smaller companies, though, because of the cost savings and because, just because.
Yes, I have a question for Margaret from Connecticut Innovations. As it relates to medical device investing, you mentioned one of the things you look at is the path to continued, the financial picture of the company going forward. And there seems to be an increasing reticence among venture firms and others who would step in at a Series A or B or what have you for medical devices, particularly FDA, pre-FDA. And because your focus is early stage, it seems like you're taking a not insubstantial risk that funding for the next round may not be there the way it was maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago. How do you deal with that? Do you look early on to try to deal with that contingency, or is it really not that much of an issue?
No, it is an issue, and I think that's why we invest so much time in the diligence process. And also, once we make that investment, whether it's at the seed level or even at the pre-seed level, we spend a lot of time with our portfolio companies. So when we make that investment, we realize it's a really high-risk investment, and so we are really looking for that company to execute and deliver on those milestones, because that's when they're building the most value, and that's when they'll be able to then attract, hopefully, those larger institutionals or those additional family offices or angels at that next round, so at that Series A or at that Series B. But hopefully our early dollars would have built that value to deliver upon, the proof of concept, those key data sets at the very early stages, so that, as the investment continues moving down, through the different rounds, we'd be able to attract, together with the company, additional institutionals to come into the syndicate, and hopefully we would be able to follow on with those additional rounds as well. But we look to build value very early on and also be very involved the company and help build it.
So, you had your hand up.
Yeah, this question is for Glenn. You said that as a large company, Covidien, that you invest in smaller companies that you would like to acquire at some later time. And I guess from that perspective, why do you do that? What are you thinking about when you want to raise the value of a company that then you're going to acquire?
Sure. When we do make investments, it's usually in spaces that we find attractive or we think there's long-term potential, and it actually reduces our risk, right? So, we can go out and write a check for $1 billion, or we could, put some seed money into a company that's somewhat in later stages. And, for us, it's a strategic bet. We think, maybe there's something down the line, and, it's not such an amount of money that we're going to lose sleep over if we lose, if it goes south. But it does a few things. So it gets us into a new space. It gets us potentially to learn more about that space while being an insider versus an outsider. And it might turn out to be, a diamond in the rough that we can capitalize later on down the road. But we also are in there a lot of other strategics. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee us an easy acquisition, but it gives us at least a seat at the table as we learn about the industry, about the company, and maybe an opportunity to capitalize later on down the road.
Go ahead.
Another question for Glenn. So at Covidien, do you ever come across situations that you might sort of describe as buy versus build decisions? So how do you go about deciding or evaluating those?
Sure, that's it. We questions about make versus buy, and that's I was just doing that today. I mean, that's something we do all the time as we look, especially as we look at buying more technology acquisitions, because we have a great team here of engineers and research scientists, R&D folks, and everybody thinks they can do everything better here. So we definitely have I would say a robust make versus buy analysis that goes into things that we look at, and it really comes down to time and money. So is it something that we can do quicker and cheaper internally and get us to market, or is it something that if we go external, is it going to money aside, is it something that if we get to market a year ahead of where we think we can do it internally? So it comes down to money and time, and complication, and also what's the competitive environment like out there? Are other folks in the marketplace, and is speed critical? So, but we look at it all the time.
Go ahead, Ann. Oh.
I have another IT-related question, of course. In the popular press and the business press, there's an awful lot of talk about NPEs, non-practicing entities, or patent trolls, as they're called. And of course, there's legislation that's for Congress relating to this. How does this issue affect the medical device area? What issues and challenges do you see there with patent trolls and their potentially extortive or abusive practices?
Well, I'm involved in a number of matters where my client believes that they're being harassed by NPEs, but not in the medical device field. So let me just start with that. I think it is it's a tremendous problem, clearly. I'm not actually optimistic that any of the legislation that's under consideration will truly address the issue. I think that the clients that are being attacked by NPEs, the cost of discovery is so huge that the nuisance value in the case immediately becomes a significant number. And just taking it only that far in the analysis, right away, companies are at a huge disadvantage in terms of fighting these fights. But I guess I don't have anything specific to offer on the medical device side. I don't know if anybody, Glenn, if you guys are being attacked.
I'm sure we are. I mean, we have deep pockets. Everybody's coming at us. So I don't get involved in that too much at all, actually. I know our attorneys, usually we turn it over to them to handle, but we have a few different approaches we would employ around that. So I mean, you could end up buying it, or you evaluate it. And if we think we have a better position, we don't worry about it too much.
With A and B round venture dollars continuing to be tight, Glenn, how would you change your strategy over the next 5 years if that continues to be the case or even tighten further?
In terms of would we go lower down into the, I suspect we will over time, but that's our venture team. They work directly for the CEO of the company, and they have different parameters. We've always been at the later rounds, but I suspect we'll over time make some bets in the lower rounds if it's an area that we find very interesting or promising technology. But we do see that. I can remember 5 years ago when I'd go to some of these different trade shows, and there were so many folks out there pitching new ideas and new products. Especially we were looking a lot in the bariatric space because weight loss and diabetes is such a problem. All of a sudden, 3 to 5 years later, a lot of those companies aren't around anymore, and the ones that are the ones that had the interest in technology and backing to keep them there. So those companies obviously are much more interested in us.
So does Covidien ever look to the R&D in the stem cell industry, emerging industry, as sort of a new opportunity, of course, years out? Is that something you think about in terms of your long-range portfolio?
It's definitely an area that we have folks focused on, not in my business, but we want to make sure that we stay involved in all the latest trends and what's happening in development. So I can't speak in detail to that, but I know it's something to keep an eye on.
Gentleman on the right?
This is a question for Glenn and Margaret. Margaret, it sounded like you were alluding to SBIRs when you mentioned non-dilutive funding, and so I wonder if you could comment on your take on that and whether, how meaningful that is and whether it's too slow. And just to finish up, and then I'll let you folks talk. And then Glenn, I'm wondering if a small company calls you and asks if you could do a small subcontract on the SBIR, is that an opportunity or an aggravation, or do you have a systematic way to address that, or what?
So with regard to SBIRs, we highly encourage companies and all of the entrepreneurs that I talk to explore that. We think non-dilutive funding is a great way to leverage any investment that's coming into the company, so long as that governmental funding, that non-dilutive funding, is in line with their corporate objectives, so that it's not a distraction. Within Connecticut Innovations, within our umbrella, we have the SEI group, and actually Mary London within our group offers proposal review. We also have an SBIR match. So if you are a phase 1 awardee, we offer a $30,000 match to sort of take you to the next bit that would help you get the phase 2. And then even for phase 2 awardees, they offer a loan program at a fixed rate. So we really encourage, even on the investment side of things, for entrepreneurs to explore SBIR. It's a great way to leverage in dollars.
From our perspective, I haven't come across that in what we're doing. And for us, I think it's anything we look at, it's a matter of priority. And we have limited resources and limited time. So I would say probably not a focus area for us. But we're open to anything. So we do at least look at everything. We might not spend a lot of time on it. We would rule it out quickly. Anything we look at, we try to rule it out quickly, so that if we want to give some finality to either the person coming to us with an idea or a company coming to us. We don't like to leave people hanging. So but I don't see that as a big focus area for us, just because of limited time and different priorities.
So I think we have time for one more quick question, because we got to do the next thing. And then I'd like to make sure we have time to thank the panel.
This is a question for Margaret. I was just wondering if you could contrast CI's diligence process with the new Bioscience fund.
Sure. So the Connecticut Bioscience Innovation Fund just opened its doors January 2nd. And that particular fund is really focused on stimulating early stage innovation, and how it differs to other investments that we do within Connecticut Innovations is that, of course, it has a strict focus within one sector. And also it is open to academic institutions as well as nonprofits, which is different, as well as commercial entities. And they are early stage commercial entities that have been in operation for less than 3 years. So that's one difference, that academics and nonprofits can apply as long as their project is at the translation and commercialization phase. So we are not funding basic research. We are really looking to take things over the hump. We will fund projects up to $500,000, and the evaluation process is different. There is a formal application, so it's very different in terms of how you would apply to the venture team, where you send in a deck or your business plan. There is a formal application, you can find that on connecticutinnovations.com/CBIF. And it's a competitive process. So it's a rolling application. At any point in the year, you can submit an application for your project, but the projects are batched on a quarterly basis, and they are scored individually, but there will be a pay line, and then those that score above a certain pay line will get funded, and those below will get funded. There is also a very strong emphasis on science. We are really looking to get the best projects within the state funded. And I guess the one other bit that is, but we are also looking for the business plan. So we're looking for the business opportunity and the market opportunity. So even though we are assessing the science to a much greater degree, so there will be an independent scientific review of opportunity, we will also be looking at business and market opportunity. I had another thought, and I just lost it. Yeah, so all the information is available on the website. There's also frequently asked questions, as well as application materials and a few other things you can check out.
Well, I thank you very much for dealing with my moderation.
I'm Peter Hicks from Webster Bank. I run Webster Bank's Emerging Growth and Technology Loan Portfolio. That's enough of an ad for that. But I want to thank the panelists. I especially want to thank Susan, who wore 3 hats for this event. She was a sponsor, she was a co-chair of the event, and at the last minute stepped in to be a moderator. So thank you very much for that, Susan. Covidien had a couple of hats as well, providing the space and the parking, and one of the panelists, so I thank you both. And also I want to thank, in particular, Beacon, who was very supportive of this event. And also you can see here all the other sponsors of CVG that helped put this on. And this, we are trying to make an annual event. You know, we have the second Thursday events. We have we have an event every second Thursday around the state on a rotating basis. And the second Thursday of March has sort of been identified as the New Haven medical device, life science kind of event. So we're hoping to put this on an annual basis, and we're looking for your feedback and your suggestions